This podcast is brought to you by Ignition from Inductive Automation. Hi, this is Gary Minchell. This is a few minutes on manufacturing and other miscellaneous thoughts. But first off, a promotion, and for those of you watching on the video, I'll show you this card that I just got. I'm at a conference this week in Detroit, and obviously I'm in my hotel room and not in my office in Sydney, Ohio. But this was the Thunder Chickens 217 high school FIRST Robotics competition team that I happened to meet. I think they're from the Detroit area. Their card didn't really say which high school they were, but it's pretty cute. The Thunder Chickens, they are engineering new ways to cross the road. Very energetic group of young people, and they had some models of the robot that they entered in the first competition. Pretty cool stuff. I talked to the mechanical guy. For mechanical engineering, geeky kind of guy, he was very outgoing, especially with his green hair that matched his green T-shirt. But they were really enthusiastic about what they had done, and they go off to different competitions. They were just back from Pittsburgh, where they had been at a competition. And the cool thing is that throughout all this, I'm at a Siemens event. It's called Manufacturing in America, and held in Detroit in conjunction with one of their major distributors. And I'm told about 400 people are here, which is a pretty good regional event, quite frankly. But they had this group and a few other FIRST Robotics teams, and that's FIRST, capital F, capital IRST. A great competition started by Dean Kamen and Woody Flowers. Woody, whom I interviewed a couple of times, was or is a professor at MIT, and just fantastic. I've seen some of the teams together, and I keep forgetting to block out time to go to one of the competitions and watch it. But anyway, great group of kids. Fantastic. And I look at it at the projects I did when I was in high school and as a budding engineering student, and we didn't have the tools or the or people behind us to actually do very much, and so it's great talking to them. Anyway, passion, intelligence, backing, all that sort of stuff. Getting young people, even if they don't become engineers, the technical background is just fantastic no matter what they do. And an interesting thing on top of all of that is they brought a young woman in to talk about PR. Interestingly enough, they write a newsletter about their competitions and the competitors and different things, and they promised to send me a PDF of what they send out. So they teach writing skills in addition to everything else, which is very important. How many engineers graduate having taken a mandatory 1 quarter or 1 semester writing course, and then they discover that fully half of their job is writing papers or memos or specifications or whatever. So anyway, it was all very well and good. Just a little aside there on supporting students at elementary, in the Lego League, or in the middle school or the high schools or in the colleges. Several colleges were here at the little trade show going on too, and it just supports the next generation, whether they become engineers in manufacturing or not. The technical background is great for their development and for understanding, and no matter whether they become general business people or entrepreneurs or whatever. So as you get the opportunity, you might consider what you could do to help out and share some of your enthusiasm for manufacturing and engineering or science with the next generation and the generation after that. Thought I would talk a little bit about interoperability and standards today. I picked up a new role in life a couple of months ago and became the Chief Marketing Officer for an association called MIMOSA, M-I-M-O-S-A. It is not the drink, nor is it the plant. It's a standards organization notable for having developed one of the best unknown standards in the industry. It's a standard for data description of assets, and it's called CCOM, CCOM, and like I said, it describes. It's a model. It's an object model describing asset information. And typically, we're talking about assets in process industries, but many of the assets are used regardless. And this could be linked, not linked, but in thought, as similar to OPC UA. OPC describes process or production variables and data coming from the process, and CCOM describes the assets that do the work of the process, if you get me. So the two work together, and there's a joint working group between the MIMOSA organization and the OPC Foundation to get the two standards to work together, one stage of interoperability. And the real interoperability we want to talk about are amongst all the applications that use OPC or CCOM. And there are a number of people using the CCOM model and not admitting it, which is okay right now, but my job as Chief Marketing Officer is to try to promote some more of that. So that's what I'm doing right now. And this podcast is promoting CCOM. Go look it up at mimosa.org, MIMOSA.org. And you'll see some other things. We also have the OIIE, the Open Industrial Interoperability Ecosystem, and we're trying to describe an ecosystem of applications that could all work together sharing data. Each application is its own, if you will, black box. Each supplier, each vendor builds its own best of class, best of breed, and whatever it is, its expertise. But for users, they need these things to work together. It's sure I've got a DCS or some sort of a database or whatever. I need, or my design software for matter. The design software describes an asset. We need that asset described in such a way that the asset information could be imported into our operations and maintenance applications so that we're all talking about the same asset. And I'm sure makes things an awful lot easier at commissioning and startup and operations and maintenance later on, and even into the decommissioning stage. Interoperability is proven to have high value. Railroads would not have the success that they had not everyone, at least within a country, settled on the size, the distance between the rails of the tracks. Therefore, if you have the same, what we call gauge, in an entire country, then companies can build vehicles, cars, locomotives to go on the train, and they can go on all the tracks all over the country without having to stop and unload and reload and whatever to go to something with a different train gauge. Cargo containers, shipping cargo containers, you can build ships around that. You can the cargo container fits exactly X number by X number and X size on a ship, and when they get off, they can be put on a carriage and become semi-trailers and hauled by a semi-truck on the highways, or can be loaded onto standard size railroad cars and be transported on land after they make landfall off of the ship. I was in a business one time where we were diversifying and looking at the delivery van market, and believe it or not, there are all kinds of standards on that. There's a standard potato chip delivery van size, and everything, the whole ecosystem around potato chips, the size of the carton, the size of the racks the cartons goes on, fits inside the certain size of the van that's optimized to fill up all the cubic feet of the van with potato chips or bread or whatever the commodity might be. So interoperability has been proven time and time again to be of value. Many vendors get concerned about standards and interoperability, that it will detract from their competitive advantage. but there's always a competitive advantage in how well you do things, but the standards and the interoperability help the end user. So in the case of what MIMOSA is trying to do, there are many end user members of the organization. For example, BP, Chevron, Dell, the Southern Company, to name just a few. And as end users are very interested in this interoperability, it cuts down their integration costs and time like crazy. So anyway, that'll be my talk right now on that particular aspect of things, but watch for more on interoperability and standards, and go check out mimosa.org and CCOM and the OIIE and the ecosystem of industrial applications that we're trying to get to all play together using standards such as CCOM and OPC. One last thing, I'm at this Siemens event, and they had a speaker who was talking on innovation and coming up with ideas, and it charged up a lot of things. And I thought I would just talk a little bit about innovation and creativity. And it's not like an esoteric kind of thing that only certain people can get into. My suggestion, my last tip for the day, if you will, has to do with every morning getting out a piece of paper and writing down ideas. And maybe you put a problem at the top of the page that you're trying to solve, and just come up with 20 ideas on that problem, 20 ways to solve the problem. The first 5 will be, ho-hum. But then after that, you start coming up with some pretty interesting ideas, and you can think creatively. I do this to come up with titles and focus for articles. I play with words. So I put a word down. I don't particularly like that word, but this word is kind of like this word, and you start putting words together, and pretty soon you come out with a catchy title or headline or something like that. You can do the same thing with business ideas. Some problem you have, write the problem down and start writing down ideas. And if you get in the habit of doing 10 to 20 ideas a day, pretty soon you're really building up not just a list of ideas, but the whole thought pattern of problem solving, where I'm always looking for another answer to what if, how, why, and these sort of things. So my tip for the day, get out a piece of paper every morning, and as you sit there with your coffee, just jot down a list of ideas and watch it grow over time. I bet the first time maybe you can only come up with 5, but pretty soon you can sit down and you start getting creative, and you play with the words, and you start coming up with more and better and more creative ideas. So this is Gary Minchell, thoughts on manufacturing and technology and software and living. And this podcast is brought to you by Ignition from Inductive Automation. And until next time, have a good week.